Part 2 of the History of Witches and Witchcraft. The Salem Witch Trials occurred in the Massachusetts Bay Colony between 1692 and 1693. Represents the deadliest and most infamous episode of witch hunting in colonial North America. This brief period of mass hysteria led to the execution of 20 people and stands as a powerful symbol of religious extremism and judicial failure. The crisis began in Salem Village, now Danvers, Massachusetts, in January 1692, with the bizarre behavior of two young girls, Elizabeth Paris, age 9, daughter of the village minister, and her cousin Abigail Williams, age 11. The girls experienced fits, screaming, strange sounds, and contortions that defied medical explanation at the time. The local doctor concluded they were under an evil hand, meaning they were bewitched. Pressed to name their tormentors, the girls pointed to three marginalized women: Tituba, an enslaved woman owned by Reverend Samuel Paris, likely of Native American or African descent, who had told the girls fortune-telling stories; Sarah Good, a homeless beggar known for her ill temper and smoking; and Sarah Osborne, an elderly, poor, and sickly woman who rarely attended church. Tituba, likely coerced through fear or violence, offered a sensational confession. She described riding through the air, signing the devil's book, and seeing other witches, validating the town's worst fear and immediately escalating the scale of the hunt. The primary legal failure that allowed the crisis to spiral was the acceptance of spectral evidence by the specially conveyed court of Oyer and Terminer, meaning to hear and determine. Spectral evidence was testimony that the accused person's spirit or specter had appeared to the victim in a dream, vision, or fit and tormented them. The Puritan legal system typically required 2 eyewitnesses to a crime. Witches by nature operated in secret. The courts relied on the dubious assumption that the devil could not assume the shape of an innocent person without that person's consent. Because only the afflicted accusers could see the specters, it became virtually impossible for the accused to offer a defense. An accuser could claim the specter of a person was attacking them, while that person stood in the courtroom, immediately proving guilt in the court's eyes. More than 200 people were accused from the crisis, ranging from marginalized individuals to upstanding church members. The vast majority of the executed maintained their innocence until the end. 19 people, 14 women and 5 men were hanged. Bridget Bishop was the first person hanged in June 1692, executed for being a witch. Giles Corey, age 81, refused to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty, died after being pressed with heavy stones for 2 days. This was a legal form of torture called peine forte et dure, a French phrase meaning strong and hard punishment. This form of torture was used to force a plea. I'm also going to note Giles was an elderly English immigrant, a farmer in Salem Village. He had a reputation of controversy, including the previous charge in 1676 for beating an indentured farm worker named Jacob Goodale to death, for which he was found guilty of using unreasonable force and was fined. Rebecca Nurse, an elderly, pious, and well-respected member of the community, executed despite a jury initially finding her not guilty. They were pressured to reconsider. However, she was still executed for being a witch. Reverend George Burroughs, the only minister to be executed, it's recorded he recited the Lord's Prayer perfectly at the gallows, a feat a witch was supposedly incapable of performing. He was executed for being a witch. The trials began to collapse when the accusations reached absurd levels, and targeted the colony's elite, including the wife of Governor William Phips. And of spectral evidence, in October 1692, Governor Phips ordered the court of Oyer and Terminer to adjourn when a new spectre court of the judicature was established in 1693. Phips forbade the use of spectral evidence, leading to a dramatic drop in convictions. By May 1693, Phips pardoned all those still in prison on witchcraft charges, effectively ending the crisis legacy. The Salem witch trials resulted in widespread public remorse and led to significant legal charges. In 1697, a public day of fasting was observed for the tragedy. One of the judges, Samuel Sowell, offered a public apology. 1711, the colony passed a law exonerating the names of those condemned and paid compensation to their heirs. The event served as a profound lesson in the dangers of religious fervor, mass hysteria, and the acceptance of non-empirical evidence in a court of law. The Age of Enlightenment, circa 1700s, marked the death blow of the European witch trials among the educated classes. Reason, logic, and scientific evidence directly undermined the belief in witchcraft as a credible crime. Intellectuals and judges began to view witchcraft accusations as irrational superstition and product of mass hysteria, leading to skepticism, legal reform, and decriminalization. Educated elites rejected the supernatural explanations for misfortune that sustained the Hunt's courts, demanding higher standards of proof, disallowing spectral evidence and confessions gained through torture, which effectively made convictions impossible. Governments eventually re-appealed anti-witchcraft laws, officially ending state persecution, even though folk beliefs persisted among general populace. And we finish at modern era 19th century to present-day witchcraft. Outside of intellectual circles, particularly in rural and marginalized communities worldwide, the belief in malevolent witchcraft persisted as an explanation for misfortune. This sometimes led to vigilantism, abuse, and even murder against suspected witches, often the poor and elderly, even in countries where witchcraft was no longer a legal crime. Starting in the mid-20th century, a movement emerged to reclaim the word witch and create modern spiritual paths, most notably Wicca, a form of neo-paganism. This is a benign, often nature-based spirituality focused on personal growth, reverence of a goddess, god, or multiple deities, and the ethical practice of magic for positive ends. It is distinct from historical demon-packed witchcraft that was feared during the Hunts. The movement is often associated with feminism and environmentalism, emphasizing empowerment and connection to the natural world. And that concludes the history of witches and witchcraft. I want to thank everyone who listened all the way through to both parts. I am so glad I took the time to children, I'll show thee the thoroughly enjoyed the process, and I learned so much. And I became engrossed in knowing how to put myself in those situations or meeting those children for life. I'm so glad we've come so far through those dark times. However, we do remember the things that came up at the hands of the witches, religious extremism, inflation and poverty, along with extreme weather events.
Hush now, dear children, it must be this way, too weary of life and deception. Rest now, my children.